Have you ever had one of those days that start off perfectly normal, but then, in a blink of an eye, everything changes? For me, that was today. As a police officer, my days are usually filled with a mix of the mundane and the unpredictable. But today, it was a whole different story. A story that began like any other. I woke up to the sound of my alarm buzzing, the sunlight streaming through the blinds. The smell of coffee brewing in the kitchen was my morning haven. My uniform was crisp, the badge shone bright, and my boots were ready to hit the streets. I had no idea that the comfort of this routine was about to be shattered. My shift started off as any other. The usual chatter over the radio, the familiar faces at the precinct, the steady rhythm of the city in the background. It was a normal day, or so it seemed. Then came the call, a distress signal, a car accident on the outskirts of town. My heart rate spiked, but this was routine, something we trained for. So, I hopped into the cruiser, the sirens wailing, cutting through the calm of the day. As I sped down the streets, my mind ran through the procedures. Secure the scene, assess the situation, call for backup if needed. It was a well-rehearsed dance, one I had performed countless times before. But as I neared the scene, the pit in my stomach grew. Something felt off. Something was different this time. The reality of my job is that not every day is a win. We see things that people shouldn't have to. We shoulder burdens so others don't have to. We step into the chaos, into the fear, into the unknown. And today, that unknown was about to stare back at me. As I approached the scene, I braced myself for the worst. But nothing could prepare me for what I was about to see. You know, there's a certain stillness that hangs in the air after a tragedy. You can almost taste it. It's a chilling blend of fear, sorrow, and shock, a potent cocktail that leaves a bitter aftertaste. And that day, as I arrived at the accident site, that stillness was thick, almost suffocating. The scene was a pandemonium of flashing lights, sirens, and the hushed whispers of the crowd that had gathered. The wreckage lay there, a grotesque monument to a life abruptly ended. The car was crushed, twisted, and mangled beyond recognition. It was a sight that churned my stomach, a stark reminder of the fragile line between life and death. As I stepped closer, the harsh reality of the devastation sank in. It's one thing to hear about such incidents, another to witness it firsthand. The air was heavy with the metallic scent of fresh blood, oil, and burnt rubber. The remnants of what was once a family car were now just shards of metal, shards that held a tale of a journey cut short. And then, as I moved closer towards the wreckage, my heart skipped a beat. There, amidst the chaos, was a child's car seat, cruelly crushed by the impact. It was a sight that sent a chill down my spine, a sight that no one should ever have to see. I forced myself to look, to acknowledge the heartbreaking reality. There he was, a little boy, strapped into his car seat, his life snuffed out in an instant. His eyes were closed, his face peaceful, almost as if he was merely sleeping. But the cruel reality was far from it. His small body lay limp, lifeless, a tiny casualty in the colossal disaster. A life that had barely begun, cruelly snuffed out. And then, in the midst of the chaos, there he was, a little boy, strapped into his car seat, crushed and lifeless. It was a sight that would haunt me forever. Now, I've seen some things in my time on the force, but nothing could have prepared me for what happened next. As I leaned in to gently lift the small, seemingly lifeless body out of the wreckage, something occurred that chilled me to my core. The little boy, his body twisted in ways that made your stomach churn, did something that I could never, in all my years as a police officer, have anticipated. His eyes, those vacant, glassy eyes that moments ago bore the harsh truth of his untimely end, flickered open. It was a sight that would have made the bravest of us falter. A sight so unsettling, it felt as though the ground beneath me had given way. This wasn't the natural response of a critically injured child. It was something far more disturbing, something that didn't belong in this scene of tragic normality. His eyes, those lifeless eyes, stared blankly at me. Then, the unthinkable happened. From his broken lips came a sound that should have been full of innocence and joy, but in that moment was anything but. It was a giggle that sounded like it came from a child who was playing, not one trapped in the twisted metal of what was once his family's car. It echoed around me, bouncing off the wreckage and the surrounding trees, filling the air with a chilling reminder of the unnatural event unfolding before me. The sound was haunting, a stark contrast to the grim silence that had descended on the scene only moments before. It was a sound that didn't belong here, a sound that sent a wave of terror crashing over me. My heart pounded in my chest as I tried to make sense of what I was witnessing. A small, broken boy, laughing in the face of death. My mind screamed for me to run, to get away from this nightmarish scene, but I was frozen in place, gripped by a terror I'd never known before. His lifeless eyes opened and he giggled, a chilling sound that echoed in the silence. In that moment, I knew something was horribly wrong. You know when you experience something so surreal, you're not sure if it's real or just a horrible nightmare? That's exactly how I felt in that moment. My heart pounded in my chest like a drum, echoing the dread that had suddenly consumed me. The world around me seemed to slow down to a crawl, and all I could hear was the eerie giggle of that little boy. I was frozen in place, my eyes locked on his. They were filled with life, but it wasn't the kind of life you'd expect from a child. There was something off, something inexplicably chilling. This wasn't a miracle of survival. This was something else, something I couldn't quite put my finger on, but I knew it wasn't right. A wave of confusion washed over me. My mind was a whirlwind of questions, none of which had answers. How could he be alive? Why was he giggling? What had just happened? But the more I questioned, the more my fear grew. I was standing on the precipice of an unknown abyss, teetering on the edge of a reality I was not prepared to accept. As the fear gripped me, I felt my resolve crumble. My hands, once steady and sure, now trembled uncontrollably. I could feel the weight of my badge against my chest, a constant reminder of my duty to protect and serve. But in that moment, I felt utterly powerless. I came to a decision then, one that would change the course of my life forever. I couldn't face another day like this. I couldn't bear the burden of the unknown, the fear that would always be lurking in the back of my mind. I couldn't be the one to walk into these nightmares anymore. So I made the choice to walk away, to leave the force and the life I had known. It wasn't an easy decision, but it was one I knew I had to make. I knew then, as I looked into those giggling eyes, that this would be my last day on the force. So what do you do when the reality you know is shattered in an instant? You see, as a police officer, you're trained to expect the unexpected. But nothing, and I mean nothing, prepares you for the moment when the veil of normalcy is ripped away, revealing a world that's far more complex and a whole lot scarier than you ever imagined. The day of the accident, it wasn't just the life of a little boy that was taken. It was my sense of certainty, my belief that I understood the world around me and my place in it. I was left grappling with questions that, quite frankly, I'm still struggling to answer. How do you reconcile the image of a giggling child, seemingly unharmed, trapped in the twisted metal of a fatal car crash? How do you explain the unexplainable? I wrestled with these questions, turning them over and over in my mind, finding no answers, only more questions. The experience shook me to my core. I was forced to confront the fragility of life, the unpredictability of it all. It made me question my role, my profession. Was I really cut out for this? Could I continue to face the horrors that this job often brings, knowing that reality could shift in a heartbeat? But amidst the chaos, I found an odd kind of clarity. I realized that life isn't about having all the answers. It's about navigating the unknown, about facing our fears head-on, no matter how terrifying they might be. I learned that it's okay to feel lost, to feel scared. It's a part of being human. That day, I left a part of me in that wreckage, a part that I'll never get back. But maybe in some twisted way, it was a wake-up call, a reminder that life is unpredictable, fragile, and sometimes downright terrifying. Y'all, we're wrapping up here, but don't you go anywhere just yet. Show some love, hit that like button. Fancy more content like this? Go on, subscribe and let that bell icon ring so you won't miss a beat. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, sharing is caring. Until next time, stay tuned.